Welcome back, everyone. We are here in another episode of Mondays with Micah. We are here with a new sheriff on the scene. I'm so thankful that I've gotten our Southampton County Sheriff, and now we are in the city of Suffolk, and we have Sheriff David Miles on the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for allowing me into one of your offices. It is a whole mural back here. We could not get it all into scale, but I love when I come places and they bring history inside the building that are telling the story from outside the building. And they are doing a lot of revitalization here in downtown Suffolk. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm seeing a lot of road things. I'm seeing more murals. What are y'all doing downtown?
So the city of Suffolk is still a relatively young city. We just turned 50 years old a couple of years ago, and there's a lot of history here. And Suffolk, even though it's a very large city, 430 square miles, we kind of are broken up into like three different regions. We have northern Suffolk, which is more transient. We have downtown Suffolk, which is really the feel of the history of Suffolk, and then we have our rural parts to our west and to our south, where you'll see more farmland and more the residences spread out. And not growing up here and then coming here later in life, it kind of helped me to appreciate this city with the roots of who it is and the identity of who it is. And our downtown is still kind of tight as far as, because it was built during a time where people had more pedestrian traffic, and now with cars, they are still trying to make sure that it still stays alive and trying to revitalize some of these historical buildings to not only retain the former identity, but also bring it into current. Now, you might have seen that we just built a new library downtown that just opened a couple weeks ago, and we're excited to see. I think the city has a good vision of where we're going, but we don't want to lose where we came from in that growth.
I love that. I know that I have been in the art museum, or they do like different plays and things like that.
The Center for Cultural Arts?
Yes. And so that is bustling, wouldn't you say? There's different things going on there. I have been here for different things outside of that building with the Obacy Foundation. So there's medical things that are in this area. I would say most known for is Planters Peanuts.
Absolutely.
So we are a peanut area. My dad was a farmer for 30 years.
Wow.
And peanuts was one of the crops that he grew. And so I'm very familiar with the agriculture in this community, and as a real estate agent, I have shown property all up and down this side of things. And yes, he explained that very well. There is the Whaleyville area, or the Western Suffolk area, which is more rural, not as developed, a lot of horses, a lot of ranchers. And then you get into the downtown area, which does have a little bit more of that urban feel. What you would think of downtown is there's still some shops here. I know in past decades there was more shops, but more and more food is opening up here. A place that y'all have seen me frequent on my stories is the Pinner House. I'm going there like every other week, taking somebody for their birthday who has not been. If some of you don't know, I'm a foodie, so I'm in the hunt for the good food, and I'm only friends with people who like food. So I hope you like food. So that means we're going to be friends really quickly. And for special occasions, we've gone to Harper's Table, which is located right outside of this building. He is a former resident of Franklin and grew up there. We're probably pretty similar in age, I think. And so it's really cool when you see people become entrepreneurs or chefs, if you want to call it, but they are modernizing and taking an idea and turning it into a business. And I really think that is part of the resilience of these smaller towns, is the reimagining of things. And even in Franklin, we have Hub's Peanuts. And so that's second generation, but it's like they went away to school, they learned some things. They're still doing it the old way, but the way they market and the way they label and the way they network is a new way. So that is really, I think, our generation's position kind of is to, like you said, keep the integrity of what the town originally was. Now, when you mention the word identity, can you explain a little bit more of what the identity of Suffolk is?
I think it's now Suffolk, in similar fashion to Franklin, is you have so many families that have been here for generations, and the fingerprints of those who have come before us is still here, not only in what they've built or the businesses that they have that they had, but also the families are still here. And especially for downtown, you have a lot of those history, especially some of these neighborhoods down here where that these people that live here now grew up in that same neighborhood and either live in the same home they grew up in or bought another home to still live in that same neighborhood. The high schools that were once here, some of them are still standing, but now they're middle schools. But also some of the high schools that were once here, the identity of those students that graduated from those schools, they're still preserving the name. They're still preserving the identity of what made this city, who this city is the people that reside here.
That's awesome.
And it is so nice for me to come here. Years ago when I moved here, my wife is who brought me to Suffolk.
Okay.
And to be able to learn the culture and learn who Suffolk is from an outside standpoint, I think made me appreciate it almost as much as those who grew up here.
Absolutely.
So my parents chose to raise me in Chesapeake. I've chosen, and my wife and I have chosen to raise our children here in Suffolk. And Suffolk is on the map, not just for peanuts. There's a lot of talent here. There's been athletic talent here, artistic talent here. There have been people who have gone out of not only outside of Hampton Roads, but outside of the state of Virginia and put this city on the map. And I'm humbled to be a part of it, but also I know I must help to preserve it. Absolutely. Because there are some who don't like some of the growth that has come to this city because they feel like the identity of the city is changing because this was a rural city, but also Planters Peanuts and then Oversea, they made a lot of what we have now. They created an infrastructure. I mean, we have a city that's built around train tracks. You know, if you think about it, like the downtown corridor here was built off the train track. And that's still who Suffolk is. Wow. Now, it is so odd that we have overpasses in neighborhoods. Something I didn't see growing up in Chesapeake. Right. We just built another one off of Nansemond Parkway. So this is who Suffolk is, and Suffolk is going to grow. Growth is going to happen. Yes. I'm excited to see the sausage made, as it were, because I'm seeing the city growing. I grew up in a city that was a little more established, and Suffolk is the city in Hampton Roads that I am the newest to, because I frequented other cities, but not Suffolk. But once I became a resident here, I resided here before I worked here. And once I resided here, I wanted to be able to pour back here. And it's exciting to see, and there are some growing pains with this growth. However, the growth is here, and it's just a matter of riding the wave and enjoying the ride.
I mean, again, that, like you said, this growing pains, it's real. You know, and in the city of Franklin, you know, we've gone through floods, and that took our whole downtown. And I have a sweet spot for downtown because every job I ever had was downtown. So there's a different vibe, if you want to say. The energy of downtown is different than uptown. And I would even say here, even though the road is the same that connects you from downtown to where the Walmart area is or the Belk, there is a different energy. It just is. And I love that part that I feel like it's not to separate them, but there is a different, like I said, vibe with it. And so there's people that prefer the downtown, and there is that little more character, I would say, to the buildings, to the stories, if the walls could talk type of thing. And there's Lipton tea here that we have plants, and those plants are growing. And that's exactly what you want to do when we're planting seeds, first in the natural, then the spiritual. That's what my father-in-law used to always say. And so I can always take any natural thing and then bring a spiritual perspective that if we don't ever plant the seed, then we can never see it grow. And so to hear that we're not just growing, but you're growing beyond what has been, and continue to revitalize, to continue to reimagine is a term I like to use. So yes, to the ones who liked it the way that it was, what I feel like our generation is doing is trying to say, look, we can still hold the integrity of what the essence of it was but the system or the approach has to change because it's going to become obsolete if we don't evolve. If we do not evolve, then somehow somebody's going to create something else and people are going to start picking that, and it gets a little bit more polarizing where it is more of a black and white, like pick a side type of a thing. And I feel like our generation is trying to, at least for me, I'm more of a both and type of person. So it's not either or anymore. It's both and more. So we're trying to hold that. And so there is some structure to all of that. But I did not share with you how I even got to having this conversation with him in the first place. And so I'm calling July kind of a month of first. I've done all these firsts this month. I wasn't expecting it to be that way, but I had an appointment on the 1st of July, and my dad took me there. And afterwards, we were across the street from First Watch. And so we went to First Watch, which I don't know if my dad had ever been to. And it was not as hot that day. So I said, well, let's just sit outside, because if you've been in First Watch, it is a little louder atmosphere in there. And so we sat outside, and there was a lady sitting by herself, and her omelet looked really good. And so, of course, a foodie's going to ask, what did you order? And she said, this is what I ordered on the menu, but I really feel like I should have gotten the other one. And then she just, her demeanor was kind, and she started sharing some things, and the next thing you know, I find out that she's a widow. So of course, here I am in the city of Franklin. I'm in Harborview all of a sudden. I'm in a random place at a random time, and now I'm sitting across from a new widow. So another first happened on the first. And then we were talking about grief and sharing, and she said, I was at a funeral recently, and Sheriff Miles spoke, and I think you should give him a call, because the way he shared about grief was some of the most profound, or she understood it, and it resonated with her as a widow, the way you shared. And I said, I need his number. I want, once again, I couldn't have conjured this up. Yes, as y'all know, I've been kind of doing this series since May about being a watchman, and I have done local sheriffs. So it was kind of like on the list, but I haven't ventured into Suffolk that much. And so that got me excited that Suffolk found me, is what I'm trying to say. And so that gets me excited to expand territory and to continue to grow this platform, and to stretch myself beyond Franklin. And so thank you again for talking to a stranger and being willing to have this conversation. But can you share a little bit about why you were speaking at that service, and a little bit of what you pondered whatever you said, and I don't know if you can even remember what you said, about maybe some key points to what you were sharing about grief here with the listeners?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the funeral that we're speaking of, unfortunately, a coworker lost his wife.
Okay.
And in addition to being in public safety, I'm also in ministry.
Okay.
I'm the youth pastor at the church where I worship. And he asked me, would I give comments during there was a celebration of life.
Right.
And I lost my mother back in March.
Okay.
And my father allowed me to have the honor of doing her eulogy.
Okay.
And during this celebration of life, I shared some of the things with those in attendance that kind of helped encourage me going through my process. I believe it was 1 Thessalonians 4, and I may not quote it verbatim, but the essence of it is believers don't grieve the same as non-believers. And sharing with them what helped me through my process was knowing that I would see my mother again.
Absolutely.
And also, it is very difficult for me to talk or speak of her in past tense, because she still exists in his presence. And so the sheriff is not a Christian. David is a Christian. The sheriff is a title. But David is a Christian. David is a believer. And David, when he bore the weight of the loss, that's what helped David to carry it. And I shared with them that even for my coworker, his spouse, and then for the mother, his sons, their mother, is that we do miss, we do hurt, we do pain. We are sad for us, but we're happy for that one that has transitioned into something better. So the pain she had to endure here, the pain that my mother had to endure here, they're no longer enduring it, and they are in a better place. Not saying that just to make myself feel better, because I absolutely, without a doubt, believe that there is something beyond this. And that is what I needed. I'm sorry, I think I hit the microphone.
That's okay.
But that is what I needed through my process. And I was just sharing with them what helped me.
And so when we don't have cards in front of us, I did not convince him to say that, y'all. This is where faith, it spreads. And this is part of this conversation, or even this, our nonprofit. It is a faith-based nonprofit. We do accept all to come if you have experienced loss. But something that I had to, I don't want to say agonize with, but when my husband was sudden loss as well. And loss is loss, but there is a different type of trauma that happens when it is sudden, because it just is. And so to have young children, mine were 5 and 7 when that happened. And so to process that is interesting. And so some language started to wake up inside of me. And I believe that it is how we got here today, because I needed not just opinion, if you want to say, or feelings. Feelings are not always facts, and our feelings can feel very factual, but at the end of the day, they're not. But something that started to become clear for me and is an eternal perspective. And so some of what you're sharing, you may not have put it into that term, but this eternal perspective, not only are we given that in scripture, but once you experience it. And so I'm going to ask the question. So for me, it took a little bit to have this statement, but I have used it when I've gotten to share that God did not stop loving me when he rewarded my husband with heaven. Because the scripture says that it's the victor's crown. It's a reward for us to enter into eternity. And so, yes, there is the flesh side of us who misses our present life. And life as we knew it is gone. And so you're not just grieving the person, you're grieving the life that you're no longer going to have. You're grieving the life of parenting your children with your wife for this gentleman. And that is hard. And that can take a good while, years, to really come to a level of acceptance. But another thing is, when you're talking about that there's no pain in heaven, and we believe that the spirit is still alive. So the form has changed. We don't see the body anymore. And I don't know if were you near your mother when she passed?
Forgive me for laughing. So oddly enough, because of my wife's, where she works, we were traveling overseas. It was a trip for high school seniors, and I was on it because there were not enough faculty members to go. So they asked me, because of what I do, to be an extra chaperone. So we flew out of Dallas. So the morning that I left for that trip, I saw her in the hospital before I left, kissed her, and that goodbye didn't know it would be the last goodbye.
Right.
So on the return trip, she passed away while we were traveling back. And we landed in Dulles. Walking off of the plane, my phone rings, and it's my father, and the way that he communicated it. And so I had that entire ride from Dulles with these students that wanted to stop and eat and sit down and eat in Northern Virginia, and then have to travel all the way back to where we were meeting for the parents to get their kids. And I was just quiet because I had the I couldn't let the pressure off of what I was feeling.
Wow.
Because I did not want to ruin a great trip for them with what I was personally going through. So to answer your question, no, I was not there when she left.
Wow.
Sometimes I laugh about the fact that we passed by each other in the air.
That's it. Right.
So I am so thankful, and I thank the Lord for his consideration of me, because had she left while I was away and I could not travel back to be with my family, wow. Yeah. So her leaving while I was traveling home, it was some grace in there that I appreciate God doing for me.
Wow. I mean, look, this is real life, guys. This stuff is the reality of walking through. And from these conversations, I start asking a little bit more deeper questions, because there's a lot of tension around those goodbyes. And people have expectations, and you don't know you even have them until it doesn't go the way that you had hoped. And then you're angry. And so a little bit here of these conversations is really to redirect our anger, because anger, I have learned, is really a surface emotion. And a lot of times anger is one of our first emotions, but underneath anger is grief. And so if we can really ask the better question, what am I angry about, or what is the grief trying to say?
Yes.
There is great revelation there, is what I'm trying to say. It is worth pursuing those questions. Yes. And the pain doesn't last. I'm here to tell you, it doesn't last. It has purpose, and I believe the pain can be used for fuel. Fuel for good things. Fuel grows things. That is really one of my favorite passages, which I had read before, and you've probably heard of the book of Jabez, or the little story about, will you enlarge my territory? And in this process of language and trying to articulate the depth of grief, and it's so multifaceted, and people say in layers and in seasons or decades sometimes, but I never caught the previous part of that verse. And it said that he was birthed out of pain. And then the next passage says, Lord, however it was, so okay, we skipped a whole time frame because he was birthed. Now he's an adult. It would seem like, in the way that it was. So the scripture puts a lot of things together, but doesn't chronologically put everything. And now they're 5, and this happened. We don't get all of that in every story, and most of the stories. But anyway, it says at that point, he said, even if I sinned, because a lot of the older times, the names were given, if they weren't from family, like out of the circumstance. And so he was birthed out of pain. And that was a light bulb for me, because he said, even if it was a sin for why the pain was, will you still grant me enlargement? And I thought, that's a clue. If we are smart enough as widows or people who are walking through pain of any kind to say, will you take this pain and enlarge? It's an exchange. There's an opportunity for an exchange when there is a pain point in your life. And if you're a believer, then we can exchange the beauty for ashes. We can exchange the oil of the garment of praise instead of the spirit of heaviness. There is this oil of joy instead of mourning. We know the great man upstairs who has an exchange for you. And so back to the point of, in Revelations, it talks about that there will be no tears, there will be no pain. So for me, really, I would say joy started to bubble up, which is a little bit confusing to those that perceive sadness to be your grief. So a common place around here is that grief is attached to sadness, is attached to mourning. So if they see gladness on you, did you even love?
Yes.
Are you even mourning? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
But then I was trying to say, folks, His spirit is in a place where joy is infinite. The joy of the Lord is our strength. And that was the first song I ever wrote. And so the first song I ever wrote, I sang 2 days before he passed, and then sang it at the funeral. I did not see that coming, and I realized it was going to be part of my healing and a new tool that he unlocked that I didn't feel qualified for, to be able to learn how to express things. And then when you read scripture, and Psalms talks about, he sings songs of deliverance over us. And so I had songs waking up inside me for at least a year. Every morning there were lyrics looping in my brain. And then as time goes on, you want to quantify that. And I'm like, the beauty of worship is that we have a treasure chest of lyrics inside of us. And I understand not everyone remembers all the lyrics the same. Some people remember the beat, they like it, they don't know the name of the artist, they don't know. But that was his access to me, is through music as a way to comfort. And so do you have any, let's say, antidote things that you have found have come to comfort you? Now, you shared a few about how to express it, but since the celebration of life, what has continued to comfort you?
I think so. I lost another family member years ago, and that grief journey was a lot different than this grief journey. And I had regrets with losing the other family member. With my mother, I was sad for me, but as you said, I rejoiced for her, but also I was there. And for years, it was hard for me to talk about the other family member, because with every thought came, my eyes started sweating. If you're picking up what I'm putting down. But now, even in this instance, and even for it to still be so new, I like talking about her.
Right.
With the other experience, I buried it, so it festered.
Yep.
With this journey, talking about her, and even because hearing my father, because it wasn't until just in this conversation I realized my father was a widow, and he's going through it himself. And I told him, I said, please talk about her. And my father was never a person who was expressive. And to hear him be expressive in this journey is very interesting. So I'm learning him and seeing him in a new way. But also, because he would make statements about, he sometimes would forget that my brother and I, we're grieving in our own way. He didn't want to add to us by sharing with his journey. And I said, no. I said, who else are you supposed to talk to about her? We know her. We've known her all our lives. Yeah. You knew her the majority of your life.
That's it.
Because they were together for 57 years. So, no, talk about her, please. And he still calls her his girlfriend. He still brings up pictures, and I'm glad. So let's rejoice the same way that I talk about the identity of this city. Let's rejoice in her identity. Let's not try to pack that away.
That's right.
Let's keep these memories alive. She is irreplaceable, so let's enjoy.
Right. And I know even with younger kids, like, they want to hear the stories from fellow peers and people that he went to school with or whatever, because they don't know them.
Yes.
And we can't assume. And so there's a tension for me, because I don't always want to live in the past.
Yes.
And so my grandmother was a widow for 23 years. And the interesting thing is that it was hard with him too. So I was 16 when I suddenly lost my grandfather, and then 36 when I suddenly lost my husband. So heart has been the pattern in my family. My mom's dad passed of a heart attack too.
Wow.
So go get your heart checked, folks. Can you please not wait until there is a crisis? This is part of the education here on the Widow Walk, is when in doubt, get checked out. Okay. So I have these quick little rhymes. When in doubt, if something inside you feels off from what your normal is, do not self-diagnose. And if you do feel something fluttering or a tightness in your heart, do not get in the shower, because that was what happened. There was a blood clot.
Wow.
And with a heart aneurysm, the shower, what does it do? It raises your blood pressure, and whatever that clot was went straight to the widowmaker valve, and he's out. So the comfort in that, if there is comfort, is that they couldn't have saved him in the hospital, and it's kind of a painless death.
Wow.
So it's sudden, but it's not suffering, if you want to say. But I had to wrestle with a lot of things about that, because he was in the house when that happened.
Wow.
And his wife didn't save him. And so there's a lot of mental anguish with grief. And because there's all these questions that start to show up, and then you want to ask questions, and the person's not there to ask you the questions anymore. And I had to sit with these things, and whether to blame myself, there's blame. This is the dirty part of pain, is that there's accusation, there's guilt, there's shame, there's regret, like you said. All of these things start to layer on top of the grief. And there were some very strong thoughts of, you didn't care, and I'm like, that's the accuser. So, but it feels very personal. And then you have to start retracing your steps. Like, what could I have done? And what I settled on is that I really asked the Lord, like, did he have outs? Was there any, like,
warnings?
Yes, thank you. Like, is that it? That as a human, we just like go through life and then that's it. And I'm just learning that there is warning signs. Like, most of the time when we think of a sickness, we hear like, and they're stage 4. And like, how did this happen? If you really start digging into it a little bit, if they're honest enough, there were some changes that were happening that they didn't do anything about for a time. And then there is where it's a little too late sometimes in the time. And so there is some pride in us as humans, and human error can happen where we don't know everything and we're scared to find out. There are people that I know who don't go to the doctor because they don't want to know the diagnosis.
Men more so than women.
Men, thank you. Men more so than women, okay? Because women have to go early on if they are in childbearing years. We get, I don't know, into the process of seeing doctors for things earlier. Men, you don't go until you're broke or bleeding, typically, rightfully so. Hey. But in today's times, it does seem that weirder things are happening, and you kind of need to get a baseline. That's just something I'm going to encourage here today, because if you don't have a history, you don't know where you're at. True. You have no baseline to compare and contrast, and that is to your good, y'all. That is to your good. So back to walking through some of these things. Back to the comfort of it, hearing your dad starting to share in ways that he maybe hasn't before. Were there things that he said that were maybe triggering to you, or things that were brought comfort, or you had to go back to him in a further conversation and say, Dad, I've thought about that, and this is my rebuttal, or this is my encouragement?
No. I think that hearing him speak of her and speak so well of her and so lovingly of her, it gave me comfort to know that she was loved. There's always going to be a special place in your heart for your mother. You only get one. You have others that are motherly, but one mother. And hearing him speak of his spouse, his helpmeet, his rib,
totally.
That way was comforting, because my father used to have this sign, like this little framed statement in the foyer of his home. So the greatest thing a father can do for his children is love their mother.
Absolutely.
And seeing I mean, humans, we're always going to have disagreements. We're always going to have where there's going to be a rub. But as she was going through a decline, he was there with her every step of the way.
Yeah.
He would sleep at the hospital. He would go home to bathe and change clothes and come back. And he lived there with her while she was under care in hospitals. And that was one way to show it. But then to hear him, now that she has transitioned, how he speaks of her, it is significant. It is comforting. And nothing that I have gone back to question, but even if I did hear something, I wouldn't question it, because I'm happier to hear him let it out instead of to bottle it.
Love that.
And I wouldn't want to stifle that openness. And he has to process.
You're right.
I have to process. My brother has to process. Our children have to process.
Yes.
And it's different for each of us.
Yep.
It's different sometimes for us. I joke about it all the time. I can be in the room by myself and still not agree. So there are going to be instances where there will be polarizing experiences, polarizing emotions. And something you mentioned earlier, and I've shared it with my son. I said, you're going to feel.
Yep.
And it's okay to know, it starts with what you feel, but then you have to ask yourself, why do I feel it? And it's not just saying, well, it was an emotion that I was just angry. Well, why were you angry? What brought you there? Because it's one thing to look at the petals of the flower, but let's talk about the roots also. And what brought you to that point. And even in grief, it's sometimes anger at the absence, but also there's times where there's anger because you regret not taking advantage of an opportunity at some point along the way. And you can't blame them, but so you start blaming yourself. Yep.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda. All the woulds, all the coulds. And that was part of my journey too. I would have done this and I could have done that. And there's something that I wrote, and I said, and the woods became the shoulds. And the shoulds became the coulds, because you can't should on yourself, a little play on words. Oh, I should have done this and I should have done that. Well, now let's transition into, well, I could do this and I could do that. There's a new beginning. There actually is. It's end beginnings. There's this ending and there's this beginning. And that's really what eternity is. It's just the door. That death is a door. For those who have accepted Jesus into their heart, death is the door. And it's the door that they've been waiting since their birth to walk into. And so it is the reward. You have to think that there is a huge party up there, and the gathering, just, this is where my brain started to imagine what eternity looks like, and to imagine, what is he doing up there? I ask those kind of silly questions, like, what's his job? Like, is he, he played the drums when he was here. Is he playing drums up there? Is he cleaning the drums? Is he like watching the kids? Is he talking to the little cherubs? Is he getting them from class? What is it? And so there's something about, I'm just saying that we can sit in all those woods, shoulds, and the things of, oh man, we didn't go enough, and we didn't know he was going to die this soon, and now we regret that we didn't come home for family reunion, and we thought we were going to see him at Easter, and so we didn't go at Christmas, and we thought we had more time. Everyone thinks they have more time. And we just had a funeral in our church last week for a 2-year, 9-month-old little boy that passed in an accident. And so we've got, early parents losing a child. And so these are becoming, sadly, a little more common stories. And another rhyme that I say is that God gets the glory for every uncommon story. And so we get the opportunity in our choices on the aftermath, whether we're going to be the common statistic of how it typically goes, or to be uncommon and be able to share, why aren't you grieving like the world grieves? Why? And then we get to share, it's because he's living in us, and the Eternal One continues to remind us that this is a good fight worth fighting. And it changes how we pray for people in illness now. For us, we
Yes.
pray. There's times we pray that he removes the tumor. There's times he doesn't. And more times than not, it seems like the diagnosis doesn't change. But
I tell you, there's a difference. I don't believe that death is an unanswered prayer in those regards. Sometimes he heals on this side,
yes,
and sometimes he heals on that side. And for my mother, it was a heal on that side, because you say it's a door. We live in temporary, we live in time, but he is eternal, and they're still in existence. It's just not this existence. And my mother made it to the winner's circle.
Exactly right. And that reminds me, please tell your father that as a widow and widower, I read this on a quote, because there's a National Widows Day and then there's like an International Widows Day.
Okay.
And they had some commentary, and they said that for a widow and widower, it's exactly what you said, that they completed the vow. They finished it. It's the only category of people that completed the course.
Wow.
And I was like, that is such a positive way of thinking about it. Like, you can be proud of the care that you gave, or even when you're processing, man, I wish I would have done that more, and we wanted to take that vacation, and then the illness happened sooner, and they didn't get to do certain things. To pull back from what it's trying to attach to you, and remember, like, he finished it. He literally 50 plus years. It's uncommon.
It is.
And then for him to say, he's still, I mean, these are the ones that were each other's best friends. And we love to say that every marriage says that, but they don't.
No.
And there's some sticky situations when it comes to loss and reconciling the estate, if you want to say, and reconciling with broken relationships within your family after the estate.
Yes.
There's a lot of carnage on the backside of loss when it comes to finances and not having a will or probate. I mean, the list of things that I could say that the court has to get involved in exacerbates the grief process.
Yes.
And it is not what Sheriff Miles is talking about here today. It is the opposite of that. What he's talking about sounds very kind and gentle, and this beautiful, moment of her release and being, given on to the Father. And I truly believe that in the spirit, there's people awaiting her, one hand into the next life. I truly, really believe that, especially with my grandmother. And so he's doing it.
Yes.
And there's not a handbook, and it really is an individual process. And now the gift that you're getting to receive of seeing how your dad's grieving with grace, I like to say, in a smile on your face, that you're able to now share that with other people. And here you are sharing eulogies about you through your own experience. And so here we are 45 minutes in, and the question that I was supposed to start with really is, but we've been talking all about this, in your vocational position.
Okay.
And I like that you identify yourself as David, and then there's the position as separate, which I feel like a lot of times in our world, our identity is wrapped up in our profession. And so you made that distinction early on. But this series is called Being a Watchman. And what do you feel like, as a sheriff, that means not just for the city of Franklin, but you stepping in?
Suffolk.
Thank you. Thank you. City of Suffolk, but putting on the badge. I know there's things that you have to pledge. They may not use the term watchman, but I know that it's a 24-hour thing, because the instinct is there, even if you're not on call or if you're not on your time, whatever. But can you speak into what being a watchman means to you, and watching over the city, watching over your family, part of the congregation you're a part of? It's a high call.
It is. And I'm going to switch hats back to the sheriff. I've been doing this for 20 years now. and started my career in corrections, working for an agency in a different city. And being a watchman on the floors is different than being a watchman in the courtroom, or being a watchman with my family, with my, or even my spouse versus my children. But I think all of them are the skills and the attentiveness is all interwoven together. And now in this position, I'm also a watchman for others that work, that are my co-workers, but also have to be a watchman for those who come into this courthouse. And I think that the most important, one of the most, because it's hard to say one is the most important, but one of the important pieces of the puzzle is being present and being tangible, being involved, not being disconnected, and not letting, I mean, even for this position, not letting the title outweigh the responsibility. And I'm still responsible. I'm responsible for what happens here, but I'm still responsible to those who put me here. And those who may not have picked my name, it's irrelevant. There's still over 107,000 or so citizens here, and I'm still responsible to each one of them. And one thing that I've done is try to invest myself in the city between partnerships and organizations, but also partnerships where this agency and other organizations partner to make this city better. And I think that is significant.
Yes.
And it gives me great fulfillment because I enjoy what I do, but also as a watchman, I have to know what I'm watching for. I have to know who I'm watching for. And the responsibilities of the sheriff's office are a little different than the responsibilities of the police department, but we work in unison,
right? Because
we're still public safety agencies. And it's impossible to successfully be a watchman and try to carry the load by yourself. And to invest in partnerships with our police department, but also some of our civic organizations, our nonprofits, those are significant because we're all working towards the same goal. May not be in the same vein. We're working toward the same goal of making the city stronger and better for those who reside here, and even for those who visit. But if they're doing good over there and we're doing over here, and we decide to live in silos, then I think we're failing. And trying to beat down the wall of those silos and to grab a hand and say, this is what we do, I see what you're doing, there are going to be opportunities for us to partner. Excuse me. And I think that is part of being a watchman. It's because a watchman's job is to keep everybody safe and to be aware and to alert others to danger, but it's so much more than that.
It absolutely is, because part of our Widow Walk design is a gingham check, and it's really about being a lookout. We're looking out for each other, folks. That's what the good people are doing. We want to be citizens that are not looking out for this from a perspective of fear. We're looking out for the good. You know, we're looking out for each other because we believe there's growth. We're better together. Can you speak into that?
I'd like to, because you hinted at the health piece of being attentive to change, but also with one another. I love what you've chosen as the motif for what you're doing here. But checking in on one another is also significant. There's going to be high days. There's going to be challenging days. I don't believe in wins and losses. I believe you win and you learn.
It's good.
And learning from challenging experiences is also, I am not and have not been good at saying I need help. And knowing that's a weakness of mine, I have to consider that may be a weakness of others.
Absolutely.
And I think we benefit from checking on one another because they aren't going to say they need the help.
That's it.
And at least giving them an opportunity to knock on the door to say, just checking in. Checking in is so significant. And I can only imagine in the sphere of widows and in the sphere of those who are going down this journey, it is so significant. You know, you're not walking by yourself.
Absolutely. It is a mental health part of it, folks. It is not, he's talking more of just, I mean, when I interviewed the sheriff in Southampton County, he mentioned that, like, his neighbor, the grass was growing up and they had an issue with something, and he said, I'm not above the badge. Like, he went over, he cut the grass. This is looking out. This is checking in. I like to say leaning in, when we're feeling the tension on some of these things. And I know with grief, like people, there is this barrier to entry. Okay. And here at the Widow Walk, I'm here to tell you to enter it and continue to change the statement. The most common statement that we hear is, let me know if you need something. And it takes the ownership off of us. I mean, it puts the ownership onto us. We now have to, in a vulnerable state, call you and say, hey, I'm in need of something. But it's better for the other person who's checking in, leaning in, looking out, all the words, to say, hey, I made 2 casseroles. I'm dropping it off at 6. The action of the other party is literally the healing component. Like, I just need y'all to know, when you drop off that sweet tea, we've talked about that here, you go get your hearty sweet tea, McDonald's, wherever it is, when you do an act of kindness for someone else, it is pushing a portion of grief out of that person. They can't take the love in unless they let some of the grief out. Okay? And so the more love we take in, the less grief we have room for. And that's why love wins. Love wins every single time. And so this looking out for each other. But yes, when you're consumed in your own vocation, deep in your own grief, helping and serving at your church, you have a family, then how do you create space to do any of the things that I just said?
I asked the Lord for the 25th hour. And I mean, a portion of time management, but also trusting others to take care of their responsibilities. So if I'm doing their job, then who's doing mine? But also it's a matter of you sowing and reaping, like you said earlier, and planting seeds of partnership, planting seeds of trust, planting seeds of dialogue. And then in the harvest times, they come back.
That's it. And sometimes, and the scripture says, and 5 and 10, 1,000-fold. You just never know. And that, I call it sending and mending. And so, because, if we're obedient to the thought of being sent, to send the card, to send the flowers, to send the care package, to send yourself to the door, and just bring some fresh little squash. All of a sudden I walk up to my back door and in my rocking chair, some zucchini and squash. No note. Now, I perceived it was my old neighbor because they had dropped off some before, but the second time they made a second drop, no text, no nothing. So then I sent a text like, thank you, the squash is super good. And they said, you're welcome. And so sometimes people want to do things anonymously, but I had enough of a tip to say, and it's like, that's just good stuff. It's what good neighbors, that's my old neighbor who moved, is still being a kind neighbor to give me some of his bounty. And that's the kind of food I like, is the food that I don't have to grow myself. And, but those are just simple things. Like it's, you just don't know, folks, what the day holds.
Yes.
And you think a sweet tea or 5 little pieces of squash isn't going to change your day or your mood. But I'm telling you, it literally flips it on its head, and it gives people strength to make it another day or the following day, because there is, especially in the widow and widower community, in the more elderly community, it's a shock to their system. And what do I mean by that? They not only lose the spouse, but let's just get into it, they lose touch. I'm not saying lose touch with the society, and that's a piece of it too. They can get very isolated in it because their identity was as 2, and to become 1, they have to stand on their own 2 feet, and it is hard sometimes for people to do that. But also, just the physical lack of touch in a widow and widower's life instantly changes. We need community because we need to be social, and we're social people. We learned that in COVID. And so it's not just about making a phone call. I'm just trying to give the complexity of what loss is.
Yes.
You're not just missing that conversation. You're missing the affection. You're missing the adventure buddy that a lot of people would say, where they had their person. Some people, when the police came to them and said, "I'm sorry for your loss because I interviewed a widow whose husband died in the line of duty." That's really what sparked this whole series, is like, oh my gosh, I've never talked to any of the first responders in this sector of paid sector that is the protectors in our communities. And they said, well, can you call can you call a girlfriend? And she's like, he was my best friend. And I was like, that's deep. That's deep. You all of a sudden, you need more than just your spouse in the agency of growth. So what I'm saying is the shock of the loss is deeper when you don't have as much support around you.
It is interesting. This didn't realize how deafening that silence is. But my mother-in-law would allude to it, that the quietest time is after the funeral. Everyone's checking in preparation, and you're drinking through a fire hose in preparation for that. And then thereafter, even, there's also the pieces of trying to get affairs in order, but also a lot of times people stop checking after the funeral. And you don't realize how alone you are, because the voice that you are most accustomed to is the one that's gone.
Yep.
And trying to remember that for my father and checking in, and even if it was once a day.
Yep.
And now I don't do it every day, and sometimes it's a text, and he doesn't know it, but I still have his location on his phone.
Good.
So I want to know where he is.
Yep.
And just because he may be at home doesn't mean he's okay. So I still want to make sure.
That's it.
And what you've touched on about needing a greater community is, it's not just up to the service. It's then on, because that person's life, especially for, when it comes to spouses, you're now half of who you were, because you two became one, and now you're half of who you were. And there's certain places my father didn't want to go to because he was accustomed to going with her.
Absolutely.
And I would invite him, do you want to go? He said, I'm not ready for that yet. And I appreciate that honesty.
Yes.
It wasn't a matter of, what do you mean you're not? No.
Right.
Yes, sir. Understood. And I'll either wait or won't have that invitation again.
Yep.
Because he is not ready to have that experience apart from her.
That's it.
And I absolutely understand and respect and
because
appreciate
it's a strong we grief wave when that happens. I mean, it kind of hits you hard, and so if you're not ready to embrace that, it is grief is like waves. And sometimes I said the thing about the ocean is that, it can handle it all. The ocean is flat sometimes. And then the ocean seems kind of like it's going right and it's left. And the waves kind of mush out. And then there's ones that just come in this cadence, and it's slow and it's flat. And then we were there a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great boogie boarding day. And it was like there was this little lull. And then we'd get these 5 minutes of great waves, and they'd catch them and they'd go. And it's like, okay, if we knew that every 10 minutes or every 30 minutes we'd get that wave, okay, we'd get into a rhythm with it. But it's not. No. It isn't like that. We have silence, and we have the flatness at times. And then, but whatever emotion we have, the ocean can handle it. It can absorb all of it. And that's what the Father can do. The Father can handle all of our feelings, all of our emotions. He never gets tired of us. I had to really get my mind around that as a parent, because I get tired of noise and complaining. So how do I separate my fleshly parenting lack for the Father's parenting us, where it says, no, he desires to hear from us. And for me, it grew my relationship with the Lord because there was a longing. There's a longing that happens because you miss your person. And I got this revelation that that's what Jesus and the Father were like. And Jesus going back to be with the Father, even though he was so happy to be back with the Father, he's not with us. The Holy Spirit came, but Jesus walked with us. He talked with us. He feels all the things. But that longing to be with us, there's a waiting period right now. And so we're trying to gather as many people as we can so that the party's the biggest party you've ever experienced in your life. And it's worth the pursuit. I mean, that's really what I'm here to say, is that even the grief has shown me that love. Why do we grieve deeply? Because we loved deeply.
Absolutely.
Love is grief unaware. And yes, we hear that grief is love with no place to go. I'm telling you, there's plenty of places you can talk to the sheriff to find out, where can I put my love, because it's misplaced right now because it went to her.
Yeah.
And so my challenge to you listening is to, if you are a believer or you're considering wanting to know more, get in touch with us. You can email us at thewidowwalk@gmail.com. If you are in your local church and you're dealing with some grief, please go to your pastor. Let them know that you need to talk it out. You know, there is so much of grief is processing. And so I'm so thankful you're saying that your dad is using his words and that his children are allowing space for him to use his words. That is why we started this foundation in the first place, is to create space for people to come with peers, so that when they say certain things, I asked them the other day, are any of you sleeping? Not one of them.
How about that?
Not one of them is sleeping well. So I still haven't figured out how to solve that solution exactly, but it was an interesting thing that in different years, they're all waking up 4 a.m. You know, they're not having a full night's rest since the loss. So I would ask your dad that too, to make sure he is sleeping, because that is a big adjustment, and a lot of them struggle there for a time. Well, I hope y'all have enjoyed this story, this sharing time. What beautiful, I hope you feel the joy in his laugh already gives joy. But I hope you can see that, City of Franklin, you're in good hands.
Suffolk.
I mean, thank you. Why do I keep saying it? See, I'm such a Franklinite, and I know it. I mean, it's all right here. City of Suffolk, you're in good hands. It's right in the sign. Please. It excites me to know that the people that are put in position here for such a time as this not only take value in the position, but they are surrendering that to the Lord every single day. They are out there praying. They are covering this community through so many different things. We didn't even get into how many times you have prayed before you walked into a situation. Lord, give me the right words at this point to say what I need to say. But if y'all have watched the chaplains episode where there wasn't a chaplain in Isle of Wight and he created that position, that's it. I mean, there's a growth where we can create new things out of the desires of our heart. It grows things. And for those who are saying nothing ever changes, people don't change. Well, people don't change when there isn't love. When there is love, the capacity to change changes. And so no matter what you've been through, please lean on each other. And if you don't feel like you have a community like that, get in touch with us. But if you know somebody else that I need to interview that's part of the City of Franklin in whatever sector, whether it's in hospice, a nurse at OBC, I have not gotten on the inside yet, please let us know. Send this video to them and say, hey, would you be open to having a conversation with her? Yes, I'm talking about being a watchman, but it's more than that. It's about faith. It's about grief. It's about community. It's about family. And we're better together.
Certainly so.
You have any final thoughts to say goodbye?
A couple, if I may.
Yes, please.
One is one of the ministers during my mother's service made a statement that I thought was profound, that grief is a byproduct of love. And we grieve because we love. And you've alluded to it earlier, and I think that is very important. And the second is, there's a young lady in our church that works in the mental health field, And I asked her a question because her husband had not long ago lost his mother, and she was watching him go through his process and trying to be a wife, but also thinking of, in her professional sense. And she gave me some advice. And she said, David, allow yourself to feel, because we can become callous to our own emotions, trying to bottle them. And I look at it like shaking a soda. It just means it's going to eventually explode because you're refusing to allow it to let the pressure off. And for those in this community of I'm not in this community, but I'm observing this community through my father, is allowing yourself to feel both in the immediate and in the long term.
Yes.
Because denying it doesn't mean it's not there. The elephant still has a trunk and it still has its tusks, and that elephant will run you over if you don't acknowledge it. So I really want to say thank you.
Oh,
I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
When we spoke on the phone, I was excited at the opportunity.
Yes.
I was surprised by the opportunity.
Yes.
But this has been great for me.
Awesome.
And hopefully I shared something that is of some value to someone.
So beautiful.
But thank you for the opportunity. Thank you all for allowing me to have a few moments to speak with you.
And this is when you know that the Lord is in the midst, because I didn't know he had lost his mother. That didn't come up in the conversation. And so once again, all of us are living our lives, walking with grief in the midst of our lives as we're facing our day-to-day stories. We're walking with others through grief, and we can't be strong all the time. We have to allow ourselves to feel it, to heal it. That's what I like to say. If we got to feel it to heal it. And once we feel it and can acknowledge it, and that is really how it is really also with salvation. Until we get to that place of surrender, there's not that transformation. And it's the same with healing too. So he knows some people in the mental health business as well. And again, we want to continue to add to our directory of assistance on our website. You can find that under the grief education tab. And we're going to, as I meet new people and learn about other positions, we will add those people so that if you come to us and say, man, I'm really struggling with this, we can say, hey, we have a phone number for that. And that's how we're going to grow this. And we need to hear from you. Comment below, share this on your socials. We need his story to just really blow up here in the city of Suffolk and beyond. If you know him, we need some testimonies, all of that. Sharing is caring. See you next time for more stories. I've got pastors that are coming on the scene. I'm excited to hear from more of them because they're watchmen too. And they are sometimes just as much on the front lines of tragedies that happen in our communities as the police force. And so it's together that they are doing their part, and so are you. Bye-bye.